Welcome, friends,
to the How-To Heretic.
I'm Uncle Mark.
And I'm Uncle Dan.
And I'm Uncle Doug.
And this is your user's guide to life on the outside.
That's right. Leaving religion is the first step into a larger, better world.
But it can also be a scary world. Oh my God. Things work differently now.
Never fear. That's why we're here.
Oh, we're your audio uncles. And with help from good friends and experts in all sorts of fields.
We're going to share the stories and seek the knowledge to build a great life.
After all, you only get the one that we know of, so you better make the most of it.
Gents,
howdy do.
What is
greetings
important?
to all.
Greetings to all. What is important about this week is not only that it is episode 159, but that it was preceded by episode 158, which was a very special episode of Blossom because it was kind of a live show.
Yeah.
Sort of. Wow, we had a super time.
Yeah, we did. We got to see everybody's bright and shiny faces.
We did. We had a great time. We gave away a slew of T-shirts to people who, by rights, probably really lost the game. And and the Shul clan. I'm looking at you. And it was great fun. And then we had a Hosanna shout at the end. And how do you improve on that?
And I do want to. I mean, we should mention that the T-shirts are available to all.
Yes, on the Heretic
for money.
Yeah, for money. All you have to do is you don't even have to win a game. You just pay us some money, and then boom.
And they're currently on sale, by the way. Threadless is having a sale. So head over there, get some Heretic merch. We're going to need it. I believe a show is famous for saying winter is coming. So that aside, here we are in episode 159. What a show. There's some ups and downs for sure, and I'm going to do a little book review for us about two books actually, in the Mormon contribution to the Satanic Panic. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, and then I'll try and bore everyone to tears with a little story about Mormon communism.
Yeah,
Mormonism. And I am going to scare us all to death by talking about the religion of the person who will likely be our next Supreme Court Justice here in these United States.
And who is like 25 years old and will be there until 3263.
Mm-hmm. She's older than me.
Is she?
I'm a young buck.
She's mid to late 40s, 47 or something. Anyway, we'll talk about it.
That's some consolation, I guess. So there you go. Let's... Anything special, guys, other than the YouTube channel is there? Vern's populating that for us, so go click on the links there. And Joe is still holding down the fort over to the Facebook page. So,
it's not the Facebook page, which everyone should go and like, is a different thing than the unofficial How to Heretic fan group. That's what Joe does.
That's right. People post on the unofficial fan group one. So go there.
That's how you tell the difference.
Yeah, something's been posted since 2013. So anyway, enjoy all that stuff. We're blown up on social media, and with that, let us dive right in.
Uncle Dan.
Hello.
In spite of the fact that we all saw each other in person the other day.
Hello. Oh, sorry. Yes. Oh, yeah, we did. We saw each other in person.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
We had an IRL. Luckily, Doug's backyard is big enough for us all to be in opposite corners.
Yeah,
we literally haven't done that since
the whole
March.
Time. Yeah. We sat a good 10, 12 feet away from each other and reveled in Trump's diagnosis. But
yes.
It just reminds me that during quarantine, there are many things I should have done and didn't do. Some cardio would have been a good idea. Trying to get some kind of handle on my alcoholism could have been a good idea. But I also didn't read as much as I wish I had. So I think, in lieu of reading, I'd sure like someone just to summarize some books for me so I can act like I did.
Let's call this our quarantine book club.
Yeah,
and
there is a service I've heard advertised where you can listen to just kind of the summary of a book.
That's our next podcast.
Audio book summaries, which is kind of hilarious.
It's non-readers digest.
Yeah, Cliff Notes via the radio. So I got a book review for you guys.
Woohoo!
A couple of books actually, but let me start here. You guys know how it's an open joke that New York Times op-ed writer Tom Friedman, world traveler and bon vivant, mighty champion of both siderism, has the uncanny ability to find himself in the backseat of a cab anywhere in the world, only to have unsolicited the driver of the cab offer an opinion about whatever Mr. Friedman has in mind at that very moment. Mm-hmm. Like a cabbie in Cairo offering his thoughts on the American voters' consensus on the capital gains tax, or an Indian tuk-tuk driver's musings about the North American Free Trade Agreement, or a Filipino cabbie wondering when the Democrats are going to get their duffs and get off their duffs and come to the table for a bipartisan agreement on a malingering omnibus spending package. Yeah. Total bullshit, right?
I think he even had one of his caddies at a golf course be the source for one of his columns.
Yeah, for some Byzantine American, inside political baseball thing. So
listen,
complete bullshit.
We were raised on that shit. We were look, Mormon General Conference is happening right now.
Well, here comes that. As Dan introduced, so for our Mormon friends,
I don't mean to jump your gun there. Sorry,
but you're confirming my bias here. So you're being my cabbie right now. So how about high-ranking 70s or apostles in the Mormon Church speaking at conference, indeed going on at this very moment, always having just the right anecdote of a miraculous change of heart in a troubled doubter, or fuck it, a literal miracle that fits almost too neatly into the very specific moral they're selling at the moment. Yet, those godly folk who are the subject of these faith-affirming stories are never specifically named.
No.
Funny that, but these holy men with such sacred callings would never lie about a thing like that, would they?
It's always just, a sister in blah, blah, blah once told me about, and never named.
There's never a name. So these are two excellent examples of agendas in search of a supporting narrative. Uh-huh. In both cases, these are obvious lies told to support a preconceived position. And I should give a loving shout out here to our superfan and patron Ivana Ivy for the lead into this insidious quagmire we're about to jump into. Back in episode 23, we did a big examination of the satanic panic of the 1980s and 1990s. That never really went away and now has found a home among many of our relatives and their laughably pig-stupid new cult, QAnon, which we covered in episode 102, but it's completely shifted what it was even since then. In that episode, we discussed just such an example of an agenda-forward blizzard of lies, the book that is largely credited with, if not starting, at least turbocharging the satanic panic, and that book was called Michelle Remembers.
Right.
This salacious and preposterously fictional screed is claimed to be the result of psychiatrist Lawrence Pasder guiding his patient and later wife, Michelle Smith, through a program of recovered memories which included a satanic dentist, which dentist isn't, exactly. Pulling out most of her teeth, then drilling holes in the rest, having horns and a tail sewn onto her body, and being dragged around by Satan's tail during an 81-day Black Mass in sleepy Victoria, Canada, where the actual Virgin Mary showed up to tell her she was going to be okay. You know, all real things that happen. This fraudulent piece of garbage became a guide for police departments nationwide on how to target weird teenagers and daycare workers and charge them with the ritual murders of children who weren't even missing. And the authors were even invited on the Oprah Winfrey Show.
Yeah.
Though, as was established in episode 22, Oprah is pretty down to signal boost any absurd sort of bullshit that comes across her plate.
100%.
Because Utah Mormonism never failed to surprise, disappoint, and horrify, it turns out some Utah Mormon shenanigans may have influenced the authors of Michelle Remembers. How about that, guys?
What? Oh,
so
we are so
proud to be a
powerful.
Utah.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's dive in. In 1971, a 200-page, quote, diary, conveniently authored by Anonymous, hit the shelves. It's purported to be the diary of a good white Christian girl who, after having LSD slipped into her cola pop at a party, falls into a life of addiction, sexual slavery, and most shockingly, occasional foul language.
Oh, no.
Yeah. The, quote, diary, Go Ask Alice, was an overnight success. It has been translated into 16 languages, has been reprinted 43 times, and
Jesus.
And it is, in almost 51 years, it has never been out of print. Never. It was, quote, edited by a sweet little Mormon church lady by the name of Beatrice Sparks. Born in Idaho in 1917, Mrs. Sparks raised a crop of Mormon boys and got her Ph.D., *, from BYU after moving to Provo, Utah. She became interested in the issues teens face, mostly how to scare them into never leaving the Mormon Church, and became a teen counselor of some kind in 1955, although that's a bit vague. Sometime around 1970, it occurred to Sister Sparks that she had a diary of one of her clients tucked away in a file. And my goodness, wouldn't it be helpful to the youth of today to read about the slippery slope from a glass of cola pop to fucking bikers in a graveyard for a dose? So, deeply concerned to preserve the anonymity of the deceased young girl in the story, Beatrice got to work. But funny thing, despite the book's massive success and influence, no one ever came forward to corroborate the story. No parent, friend, or relative, nobody. Sister Sparks claimed the diary, which she said was a loose collection of notebook pages and random scraps of paper you'd find at a wild drug party, is forever locked in her publisher's vault. Sure wouldn't want poor Anonymous's cover blown 50 years after her death, right, guys?
Right.
And it gets a little shakier still. While loads of teens read the salacious details, and still do, of this young adult fiction version of Requiem for a Dream, with trembling fingers and halting breath, having returned to it as adults, many of those same readers find it suspicious. Teens tend to write in a pretty basic, if emotionally gushy sort of shorthand in their diaries. That would even be more true of a teen who, despite being strung out for weeks on a combination of speed, acid, booze, and weed, laying on the floor of a flophouse, yet still able to engage in the ladylike discipline of keeping a diary. Comedic writer Daniel Mallory Ortberg plucked some of the choicest bits of hilarious, quote, teen language, so I'm pulling from his writing here to share with you guys. The diary opens with the excited teen gushing, "Wonderful news, diary. We're moving. Daddy has been invited to become the Dean of Political Science at blank. Isn't that exciting? Maybe it will be like when I was younger. Maybe again he'll teach in Europe every summer and we'll go with him like we used to. Oh, those were fun times. I'm going to start a diet this very day. I will be a positively different person by the time we get to our new home. Not one more bite of chocolate nor nary a French fried potato will pass my lips till I've lost 10 globby pounds of lumpy lard."
Oh, my God.
Okay, I will give anyone listening a shiny new gold doubloon if they can find a single American teenager born after the Civil War who has ever once said the phrase, "Nary a French fried potato will pass my lips."
No, you can only say French fried potato with an English accent or like Sling Blade.
Yeah, you got two options.
Got a little French fried potatoes.
Diet today. So, and then another time she dramatically laments, "Dear precious diary,
oh Martha,
I am baptizing you with my tears. I know we have to leave, and that one day I will even have to leave my father and mother's home and go into a home of my own. But ever will I take you with me." This is a 15-year-old girl in the late 1960s, and I'm pretty sure I can prove the last person who ever said, "Ever shall I take you with me," came over on the Mayflower.
This is Anne of Fake Gables.
Oh, it's so... But wait, here comes the turn. That same young diarist, all flush with horsey love, giggling over her diary on her princess bed in her flowered pajamas, in a few short pages becomes this person. And I mean in a few short pages. "But just before I was too out of it to notice what was going on, I saw Sheila and that cocksucker she goes with lighten up and setting out speed. I remember wondering why they were getting high when they had just set us out on this wonderful low. And it wasn't until later I realized the dirty sons of bitches had taken turns raping us and treating us sadistically and brutally. And that had been their planned strategy all along, those low-class shit-eaters."
Oh my God.
And
wow.
Yeah, and this. "I don't know who or when or where or who it is. I only know that I am now a priestess of Satan, trying to maintain after a freak out to test how free everybody was and to take our vows."
Wow.
And then this, which I just love. Like this is real. "Another day, another blowjob. The fuzz is clamped down till this town is mother dry. Okay. And then
the fuzz.
The fuzz.
Only a 90-year-old.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
I know. This is the...
What year was this published?
1970 or 70.
It almost sounds like
good
Edward
Lord.
G. Robinson wrote that, you know?
Yeah, it's Dragnet, right? Yeah. and then shortly after that day's obligatory blowjob, the book ends jarringly, followed by this postscript. The subject of this book died 3 weeks after her decision not to keep another diary. The parents came home from a movie and found her dead. They called the police and the hospital, but there was nothing anyone could do. Was it an accidental overdose? A premeditated overdose? No one knows. And in some ways, that question isn't important. What must be of concern is that she died, and that she was only one of thousands of drug deaths that year. So, maybe if Mommy and Daddy had called an ambulance rather than the hospital, where the ambulance goes to, she may have lived. So, as Dan was alluding, for anyone who may or may not have any drug knowledge out there, the, quote, writer or, quote, editor of this alleged journal definitely had none.
Right.
Here was the order of drug use in the book. See if you can see any red flags. LSD, speed, benzos, various uppers and downers, injected speed, much, much more acid, tranquilizers, and lastly, marijuana.
Oh, she finally made it to the bad one.
It was the weed she was most terrified of, ended up selling her body for, and if narrative progression is to be believed, died of.
Right.
Oh,
I mean,
my God.
Sure, diary.
That
Sure.
list of drugs was lifted directly from Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, except in reverse order, obviously.
Exactly.
Right.
That's just what he had in his pocket.
Yeah.
So, as Dan was alluding to earlier, so just from the language and obvious ignorance of drugs, their typical progression and effects, the listener can judge for themselves whether this, quote, diary was written by a teenage child of the 1960s, or maybe, just maybe, a very sheltered religious Mormon lady born during the First World War with a serious missionary zeal for her moralizing agenda. Take your time.
Oh, my God. Also, you can smell, especially when you grew up in it, you can smell when someone's trying to use shock language for Mormons. Yeah. Like, the word blowjob
would make a Mormon teenager faint in 1971.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But like someone who was actually like sucking dicks to get their next hit, they wouldn't be. Nobody would say, "Another day, another blowjob."
Punching the clock.
Got a case of the Mondays. Yeah, no,
So in
and
short,
yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, I'm just I want to get. I'm actually going to look it up and see if there's an audiobook because I want to listen to this because it sounds awesome.
If there isn't, we're doing one. We're doing the unauthorized audiobook. It's for patrons only. You can't tell anybody about it because we'll get in trouble.
Yeah, and I will do the kind of Mo the bartender version of her after the drugs, right?
Exactly.
We'll take turns doing different voices for
Mo
her.
Sislak.
Yeah.
Another day, another blowjob. What are you going to do? So in short, this book is a forgery and a work of fiction passing itself off as something more than that. But Snopes and the New York Times, among many others, confidently put a stake through its stupid, disingenuous heart, should you care to look those up. And that's just the beginning of Sister Beatrice Sparks's ethical skid mark on the American teenage landscape, fellas.
What? There's more?
By the way, the name Beatrice Sparks sounds like the most wholesome porn star.
So, flush and feeling all head up over her success with Go Ask Alice, Sister Sparks took on a new and very much more fraught project. Having seen the, quote, positive effect Go Ask Alice was having as a cautionary tale for young readers, a bereaved mother named Marcella Barrett approached Sister Beatrice Sparks, a fellow Mormon from the same Utah County area and therefore far too credulous and trusting of Mark. She had recently lost her beloved 16-year-old son, Alden Barrett, to suicide.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, terrible. In hopes that Sparks could publish something to warn against suicide and the terrible pain that remains in its wake, Mrs. Barrett entrusted Sparks with her dead son's real journal.
No.
Sister Sparks accepted this great trust and honor by betraying that trust stupendously. You see, for deeply religious people, when their agenda is more important than the truth, the agenda supplants the truth and, in fact, becomes the truth in their own minds, even as they consciously set about a time-consuming fraud in the process.
Right.
So after changing Alden's name to Jay and really not a lot of other details to preserve his anonymity, Beatrice Sparks took this journal of a normal teenage kid and his angst about school, girls, the raging Vietnam War, and a suffocating religious culture he was living in, and turned it into, well, something entirely different. Using only 21 of the over 200 real journal entries, Sparks meat-packed a total fiction onto the very real skeleton of this tragically lost young man's story. I'll let the words of the very funny blogger Mondo Molly lay it out. The plot. Nominally, Jay's story is supposed to scare readers off of occult activities, but Sparks casts a wide net, warning teenagers about the dangers of drugs, sexually aggressive high school girls, predatory homosexuals, Ouija boards, ESP, telekinesis, crystal balls, cattle mutilation, transcendental meditation, voodoo, cosmic alertness, astral projection, yoga, and the lost continent of Atlantis.
Oh, my God.
Wait, you just slipped cattle mutilation in there like we weren't going to notice.
Oh, I'll come back to it.
Oh, my God.
And she finishes by saying, I'm sad that chemtrails weren't a thing in 1979 because I could have completed my bingo card.
Right.
So, however tragically Alden Barrett died, and however much trust his grieving mother placed in Beatrice Sparks, Sister Sparks' agenda of the moment was Satanism and the occult. So that is what this horrendous fraud of a book called Jay's Journal is about. A good Mormon boy's descent into black masses and levitating silverware with the kids down to the purple turtle.
Wow.
That's true. It should be abundantly noted, nowhere in Alden Barrett's real diary is there even a whiff of this bullshit.
So the real diary is extant.
Yes, and I'll get to that.
It's out there. Okay.
Yeah, so Beatrice Sparks later had several versions of how she arrived at this completely fabricated libel, saying she interviewed friends of his, found personal letters, etc. She died just 5 years ago and never produced a shred of evidence to corroborate her shifting claims. She had apparently also promised the Barrett family that they could see the manuscript prior to publication, and guess what? That didn't happen.
Shocking.
Yeah. So, when the family finally read the book, saying they were horrified would be an understatement. Apparently, it was all too much for the already grieving family, and it just fell apart.
Yeah.
Mrs. Barrett, being too trusting and of a certain generation of Mormon, made the colossal mistake of not suing the pious Sister Sparks down to her last pair of garments. Alden's younger brother, Scott, has been on a lifelong crusade to clear his brother's name and expose Beatrice Sparks' bad faith assault on his memory. He self-published a refutation of Jay's journal, including the full text of the actual journal, in answer to your question, Dan. He also has a Facebook page called A Place in the Sun, The Truth Behind Jay's Journal, if anyone is interested in checking that out. Over 40 years since the book's publication and nearly 50 years after Alden's tragic death, his grave is still regularly vandalized and defaced.
Man.
I know. In a 2004 interview with the Salt Lake City Weekly, Beatrice Sparks said her lawyers told her not to talk about the book to the press, obviously, but she did express puzzlement with the anger of the Barrett family, helpfully explaining that in the 90s she had written them a personal check for $75.
What?
Yeah.
Then what the hell are they complaining about?
Yeah. Okay. So she was a deeply duplicitous fucking cultist fraudster. So got it. But let's drill into the book a little bit more here. As the quote about the plot summarized, Jay's journal is as preposterous as it is false and morally poisonous. In the story, much like the protagonist in Go Ask Alice, Jay is an innocent duped into a world of peril by insidious forces. This is a really common and conscious trope in young adult cautionary novels that want to scare young teens who would never dream of levitating in a graveyard or giving blowjobs for crank into believing the world outside their parents' or church leaders' watchful eyes is full of sneaky queers and pushermen and slave catchers in groovy vans. And it keeps their characters sympathetic to the hyper-judgmental young Christian readers. But like Alice, the complicated, bright young Jay, once corrupted by the diabolical Tina, a classic evil temptress of the sort last seen hanging out by apple trees in the first chapters of Genesis, Jay finds himself tempest-tossed in an invisible sea of, quote, O, the letter O. This is Jay's word for the occult and for the underground occultists that are every fucking where in this dung heap of a book. His closest friends, his teachers, his school counselors, the teacher at the boarding school he gets sent to after stealing from his dad's pharmacy. The entire world, and this is like Utah County in the 70s, right? Yeah. The entire world is easily 80% secret Satanists.
Right.
If one were to extend the satanic statistics of Jay's journal globally. Of course, Ouija boards make the requisite appearance. If you want to get a taste for how white-knuckle horrified Mormons like Beatrice Sparks are of those, check out episode 58. But in short, they are paralyzed with fear of them. And here are some choice quotes from the book. Just marvel at people thinking anything like this was true. All the blood was dumped into the tub, and one by one we were baptized in it, washing the sins and imperfections of our pre-O life away. Our heads were anointed with a few drops of urine we had milked out of the bull's dinghy as he was laying there. I should note here, they killed a cow in the story. So neither was it a bull nor in possession of a dinghy. And also, we're levitating slaves of Satan covered in blood of an animal we just murdered, but we're far too shy and innocent to say the word penis.
Right.
So Mormon. So here Jay is under both, in the next thing here he is under both the power of Satan and, of course, PCP.
Right.
I could feel the whole group throwing power at me, and a strange burning incense filled my nostrils, my throat, my chest. Detached from my own self, somewhat surprised, I found myself undressing and joining the circle. Angel dust. It should be called devil dust. What a young wit Jay is. I'm really pulling for this kid.
Yeah.
So here's a little spooky Mormon exoticism that Sister Sparks thought the young minds of 1978 might get spooked by. Tina and I sat on the floor with a candle between us. In a very low, muted voice, she told me how in the dark evening hills of Haiti, the drums begin to throb in the warm night air as the Wangan priests conducted sacred secret ceremonies requesting favors from Igbo, Dambala, and other gods.
Oh, wow.
So getting just a tincture of racism in there is always good.
I call that's cultural exchange is what that is.
It's like the multicultural hall. And, of course, Tina can be both a handmaid of Satan and a standard-issue high school mean girl at the same time. I quote, Tina won runner-up in the Miss Apple Hill contest. She said the Ouija board and the crystal ball both had said she would be queen and that only my negativeness made her slip down to princess. Sister Sparks was such a terrible fucking writer, you could almost believe a possessed 16-year-old boy could have written this book. Almost. So Jay's journal became a staple of the Satanic Panic canon, albeit lesser known than Michelle remembers, but the harm caused by this fever of stupidity that swept and continues to sweep the country is hard to overstate. But lest you think that the godly Sister Sparks repented her ways, I mean, other than that $75 check, she did not. She continued to, quote, find diaries, a fucking lot of them, including It Happened to Nancy by Anonymous Teenager. Almost Lost, the true story of an anonymous teenager's life on the streets. Annie's Baby, the diary of Anonymous, a pregnant teenager. Treacherous Love, the diary of an anonymous teenager. Kim, Empty Inside, the diary of an anonymous teenager. And Finding Katie, the diary of Anonymous, a teenager in foster care.
I wonder if all of these teenagers had very similar writing voices.
Probably.
I wonder. No, that couldn't be, right?
Yeah. Well, another day, another blowjob, Dan.
Boy, Sister Beatrix needs to be careful because this addiction to lies and fake diaries could lead to marijuana.
No!
So upon Sister Sparks' death just 5 years ago, she was still earning royalties from both Go Ask Alice and Jay's Journal, and very likely many more of the anonymous journals that coincidentally happened to bolster her hyper-conservative, scolding, nonagenarian Mormon views about what happens when young people dare stray half an inch from what their parents and church demand of them. Funny that. Now, most of these, quote, diaries do have some fine print attached saying they are works of fiction for all the kids that read the publisher's page of their books. But then she still casts herself as the editor rather than the author, clearly wanting it both ways.
Right.
And this is hilarious. She also wrote and produced the pilot for a children's television show called, quote, The Calamity Kids. And if you guessed both words are spelled with a K, you guessed correctly.
I was going to ask that literally.
The Calamity Kids is a television phenomenon which IMDb generously describes as no results found for the Calamity Kids. YouTube did, however, find it, and I shall put this crime against horrible television in the show notes should you feel like hitting yourself in the head with a brick for some reason.
I'm just hoping that there is a moment where one puppet says to another, "Another day, another blowjob."
Well, it's set in a Utah County kindergarten, so it's probably going to say that. So, but for everyone else, I shall sum it up thusly. If you hate a focused camera, you'll love this window into a blurry time in Utah when every man, woman, and child had a bowl cut and everything looked entirely like shit. So that's the deeply unethical, fabulous Dr. Beatrice Sparks and her teen scaring and shaming books, Go Ask Alice and Jay's Journal. Oh, except that no one has ever been able to find any proof that she had a PhD, nor did she ever provide evidence of it. She may have been practicing psychiatric care without a degree or a license, which, I mean, that's super hard to believe from this woman, right?
Right. How could that even... No, it's not plausible.
Oh, and despite saying she was the editor of her books, copyright searches show she is the only person listed. So too bad, so sad for any of the troubled teens or their families hoping for some royalties from her exploitation of their stories, real or not. And critics believe Jay's Journal was the only one, quote, based on a real person.
Right.
But other than those trifling details, that's the story of the good doctor, maybe not Dr. Sparks, and her for sure totally real Go Ask Alice and Jay's Journal. And I need a Silkwood shower.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
totally.
Yeah.
And we talked about this. We've talked about it many times. We talked about it in the Satanic Panic episode. Is that you know, like all conspiracies, if you just take a minute and really think about, which I know I've just disqualified myself from any conspiracy theory, but like, okay, you're saying these teenagers, they killed a bull in a city, in a house. Drained its blood into a bathtub. They killed it
elsewhere and then somehow got buckets of its blood home. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, then squeezed some urine out of the dinghy.
The dinghy.
Right, but I mean, all of these satanic rituals involve dead bodies and dead animals.
Yeah.
It's like these are crime scenes.
Yeah.
Right, you just like you said, Mark, the quantity of people to believe that these things are true is basically every other person or everyone who's not you. But people are credulous.
Every time you get one of these reports about satanic rituals, it's not just a single incident. It happens like weekly or monthly or whatever. Yeah. And, this is just one of 1,000 different cults just in Utah alone or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Where are all these missing people?
I know. When our own mother was wrapped up in this idea that there was a non-Mormon family in the neighborhood, this poor family, and that they had a human body in the house that they pushed children through to rebirth them into Satan, all the missing kids. I'm like, who's missing?
Yeah.
And they're, nobody's missing from school. Nobody's missing from church. Who the fuck are these children?
Right. All right. Well,
but it's believable enough that Beatrix Sparks probably died a rich woman, unfortunately.
There you go.
She died. She should have been poorer for sure. So let's move on.
Uncle Mark.
Present and accounted for.
Here's the dealio.
Tell me.
We are headed, if the election goes the way some people want in this country,
President Jill Stein, at last.
Toward a Marxist, communist hellscape.
A narco-syndicalist, Nazi, communist, fascist, jaywalking regime.
Right.
It's going to be a socialist nightmare.
Yeah.
The likes of which the world has never seen, or has it?
Or has it though?
Uncle Doug, surely you have some input on this.
I do have something to say about this. So,
Doug, you're our lead correspondent on who should control the means of production. So why don't you tell us what's up?
The Dougatariat. Well, dear uncles, it's a particularly beautiful time of year in our pretty great state. The aspens are turning. The brutal desert heat of summer has given way to soft autumn evenings. Yeah. And, of course, old white Mormon men have made their biannual migration to downtown Salt Lake City to attempt to bore each other to death in order to move up the hierarchy. That's right. As Uncle Mark mentioned before, it's General Conference time. For any new listeners who don't know what General Conference is, think of it as a version of Mormon Hunger Games, except that everyone is fat, old, white, and male. No one does anything, nothing happens, and everyone is already dead inside. So, now,
I don't volunteer as tribute.
Now, listeners, before you turn off this podcast, take me. Before you turn off this podcast, old listeners, I promise we will not review Conference right now. We'll do that another day, and you can tune us out then.
Really? Yeah, okay.
But we will wait for it to fully end and pray to Gaia there is another Hosanna shout moment that will sustain us for another 6 months. But because of the fact that this is a festival season for Mormons, I thought we could take another dive off the 10-meter board into the shallow end of the baptismal font and discuss another black eye in the Mormon Church called the United Order. Boy, I'll tell you, the Mormon Church has so many black eyes that it couldn't hold its own priesthood until 1978.
To be clear... okay, good, yeah.
The United Order...
Racism and violence all wrapped into a joke. Beautiful.
Yeah, you're welcome. The United Order is an umbrella term for several ultimately unsuccessful attempts at some form of socialism within the Mormon Church, spanning between the 1830s and the 1880s. The 19th century was a time of social experimentation around the globe, and the burnt-over district of New England was no exception. When Joseph Smith founded the Mormon Church in 1830, there were several communal experiments going on around the area. These movements were rooted in the same source materials as the myriad religious revivals that gave the burnt-over district its name. Back in episode 149 and 150, we talked about the Book of Acts. In that book, the early apostles set up a fully socialistic system where members surrendered all property and possessions to the church to be doled out according to need. If you remember, 2 early Christians, Ananias and his wife Sapphira, were killed on the spot for holding back a tiny bit of their earnings. So any self-respecting religious revival movement was obligated, therefore, to give socialism a go. This brings us to one Sidney Rigdon. Rigdon was a somewhat famous preacher in the early 19th century, where he at some point bumped into a young Joseph Smith. Their early relationship is pretty murky, but it's pretty widely accepted that he had a hand in the writing of the Book of Mormon. A member of Rigdon's church at the time was one Parley P. Pratt, who we discussed back in episode 51, and the story of how he helped cause a mass murder in Mexico and ended up in statue form outside the grocery store down the road from me is for another day. Pratt became a very early convert to Mormonism and brought the Book of Mormon to Rigdon, who read it, proclaimed its truthfulness, and converted, bringing his sizable flock along with him. So this was basically tantamount to when Dick Cheney leaked stories to Judith Miller in the New York Times back in like 2003, 2004, then cited those stories as proof of what he was saying, right?
Right.
It seems fairly clear that Rigdon was in on the plot and had hoped to make a buck off the Book of Mormon like Joseph. And it turns out that Rigdon's infusion of members may be one of the only reasons that Mormonism survived its infancy. The problem was, however, early converts to the Mormon Church were consistently poor, such that Joseph and Rigdon were unable to bilk them out of much, though not for lack of trying. Joseph saw a solution with Rigdon's own flock, a group of 50 or so people living communally on a farm, calling themselves the family. As was his way, Joseph received a revelation that just so happened to dovetail with exactly what he wanted to do in the first place. He received the revelation on what would be called the Law of Consecration in early 1831. So, I mean, the church isn't even a year old. As we've discussed before, the vast majority of the revelations Joseph received during his lifetime were related to financial matters, and he received several revelations about the Law of Consecration, which would later be called the United Order. In fact, in 1834, Joseph penned Doctrine and Covenants 104, Section 104 in verse 1, which states that the United Order was intended to be, quote, an everlasting order for the benefit of my church and for the salvation of men until I come. And no one should be surprised that it only lasted a few years. It turns out that turning over all your earthly possessions to a man renowned for financial chicanery and sexual predation was a bridge too far for many early Mormons, and it was indeed these factors that eventually led to Smith's assassination in 1844. After Brigham had taken control of the church and brought it out west, he was at first preoccupied with waging unsuccessful war on the United States and successful war on Native Americans. But eventually in 1874, Brigham instituted the United Order of Enoch in St. George, Utah, and then in at least 200 communities in Utah and Nevada. So there was no single overarching, united order, but rather 200 or so individual experiments in socialism. Because these communities were so isolated, they all had their own rules and regulations, but generally the system required members to deed over their property to the church, which would grant them back most of it to work, but reserve the right to redistribute the land to the poor as they saw fit. Now, before you're tempted to think of this as a noble venture, recipients of the redistributed land were then required to work off this debt until it was paid in full. This was, of course, a form of usury. I point this out only to remind everyone that even the attempts at charity within the Mormon Church are all tainted by some form of awfulness. So
yeah. I mean, basically, it's a fiefdom at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
You're a vassal.
Yeah, it was very feudal for sure. Members were further required to deliver excess crops and livestock to the church as well. To this day in rural Utah, you can still see what was called the bishop's storehouse, usually a barn next to the church house where the bishop kept and would store those goods. So you've seen those, right, guys?
Yes.
Yeah. So
I mean, it's a concept that still exists, the bishop's storehouse. Only now it's not. It's not what it was. It's not an actual place. It's just a store of food and stuff that Mormons who are suffering from hardship can get some food out of.
Exactly. Now, active Mormons will always point out at this point that the United Order was fully voluntary and families were under no duress to participate. This is, of course, bullshit.
Sure, Jan,
yeah. Brigham Young was known for many things, but issuing suggestions was not one of them.
Mormonism is not really known for voluntary.
Exactly.
Do it, don't, whatever.
Mm-hmm. So, from 1874 forward, 200 or so communities implemented some form of the United Order, and every single one of them would eventually fail. Most within only a few years. Even the town of Orderville in central Utah, which was founded specifically to practice the United Order, gave up on it in 1885.
They didn't change the name.
Yeah, they didn't change the name. I looked up Orderville online, and in the 2010 census, there were like 55 residents.
Yeah, it's tiny.
It's tiny. And if you drive, south on 89 to Vegas, you drive right through it.
Yeah.
One of the last towns to continue the practice was, ironically, Bunkerville, Nevada. If that name rings a bell, it's because it is the hometown of one Cliven Bundy.
Right.
Who we talked about back in episode 144.
Communist.
Yeah, exactly.
Super big fan of socialist ideas.
Yeah, exactly. He's famous only for his disdain of centralized government and the specter of socialism.
Yeah.
So there's that. Now, I'm not going to get into the political differences between socialism and communism, except to say that most of the experiments under the United Order tended much closer to communism, with property and goods being owned by an undemocratic body preoccupied with the equality of outcomes. So, this is not the form of socialism that we would find compatible with democratic societies today. These experiments all failed for the same reasons that the Soviet system failed in the 1980s. Corruption and mismanagement were widespread, and so distrust and resentment eventually led these communities to give up on the United Order, even though it contradicted Brigham's wishes. So that was not a common thing,
Yeah.
But the fact remains that from its inception to right before being granted statehood, the Mormon Church was at least trying to be a communist collective. If that seems somewhat incongruous with what the Mormon Church has become, that's because it is. The fact that an organization...
But only all the way.
But only completely and totally.
Yes.
Yeah, the fact that an organization that would make Adam Smith blush was founded on principles that would make Karl Marx proud is not lost on modern Mormonism. As the church has desperately attempted to be accepted in modern society, this history has proven problematic, especially since the main political boogeyman of the 20th century was communism. And so, the leadership has gone to great lengths to explain that the United Order wasn't what it obviously was. One of the most famous attempts for this was a speech given by Apostle Marion G. Romney at BYU in 1966. And yes, Marion is first cousin of current Utah Senator and human weather vane Mitt. Boy, it's fun to say his name with disdain. I just realized that. Mitt.
I think we'll have plenty more chances.
Yeah. This speech is still widely referenced to this day. And boy, if you want to hear a speech that has not aged well, to say the least, go ahead and give it a listen. In the speech, given during the height of the Cold War, Romney fails utterly to explain why the United Order wasn't socialist, while at the same time reminding all who listen that Mad Men was closer to a documentary than a drama. In the speech, Romney makes fun of his stupid wife for suggesting that caring for the poor is a noble goal. Then he goes on to give a tortured metaphor about two horses. I don't really understand what's going on here, but this happened. In the metaphor, a farmer has trouble distinguishing between two horses. They both look alike, run the same, and sound the same. Finally, he measures both of them, and wouldn't you know it, the white one was 5 hands taller than the black one. Now,
5 hands?
Yeah,
He
exactly.
didn't notice 5 hands worth of height difference?
He couldn't tell one was white and one was black?
that's
Oh,
right.
I get it. Yeah.
They're
I get
opposite
it.
colors, and that, to my mind, makes them
And a
pretty
huge-
fucking
5
distinguishable.
hands is a large size difference.
Exactly.
Yeah, I didn't get the joke at first. Now I get it. Okay.
Well, I think it's both things.
Yeah.
But I still cannot understand what this metaphor had to do with the subject matter. And, one can be forgiven for simply thinking of it as nothing more than ham-fisted, were it not for the fact that the church at the time fully believed in the primacy of the white race and did not allow blacks to be full members. It's pretty problematic when you listen to it. It's like,
What conference talk isn't?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the modern Mormon church has fully embraced naked, voracious, predatory capitalism and prefers not to talk about the time in college when it wore a Che Guevara T-shirt. However,
Right.
many of the offshoots of Mormonism, especially the polygamist ones, still practice various forms of the United Order.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yep. It turns out it's much easier to subjugate women if they are not allowed to even own the clothes they wear.
Yeah.
So it seems the United Order, as practiced under Joseph and Brigham, didn't have a body count. So that's good as far as it goes.
That's
But-
an incredible stroke of luck.
Yeah.
It's almost unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, truly. But as it's practiced now, it is a brutal system of control and subjugation that most definitely has a body count. So, there are people, women and men, today, not far from where the three of us are, and in places around this country that are born into basic slavery, certainly sexual slavery, that are, that are born into basic little communistic communes.
Yeah.
Where they,
and incredible poverty, women and especially women and children experience incredible poverty. I can walk from my house, Doug,
yeah.
to the headquarters of the Kingston polygamous clan here, who very much practice this shit.
Yep.
And they just live in absolute destitute poverty.
Destitute poverty. And for those who've seen Big Love, think of the polygamists that were off in the dusty desert, that lived in true misery. And there are communities, and we'll talk about them another time, but where, a lot of these kids are born without birth certificates, and they're, therefore off the grid, and therefore when they go missing for various reasons, no one comes knocking. I have to ask true believing Mormons, if any who are listening to this podcast at this point, if everything Joseph ever did was either fraudulent, false, or fucking evil, what are you doing?
Yeah.
The things that have made it to the modern era that he thought of are just terrible, terrible things.
He did some nice stuff. I'm pretty sure he did something nice at some point.
Sure.
Well, I don't know. I was going to say maybe he remembered his anniversary, and then I'm like, oh man, he had so many to remember.
Yeah, well,
pretty much every day was an anniversary.
Yeah, if you have that many wives, you're gonna hit within a week or so of something. So.
Yeah. Just give everybody flowers every day, just to be on the safe side.
Right.
And now I am not an anti-socialist. I believe in many of the principles and goals of socialism, and not for nothing, but Jesus was undoubtedly a socialist too.
Yeah.
But I don't believe
How dare you?
I don't believe for a second that Joseph tried to implement this socialist experiment because he gave a shit about the poor or injustice.
No.
He thought it was a way to get his hands on their money, pure and simple.
Yeah.
And, if Joseph had become a rich man before he died, he would have absolutely done away with it because, he had the money.
Well, and we've talked about multiple cults that take the same tack. You give me all of your money, I distribute it to all of us, and then the rich guys don't notice that even though they're participating in, quote, the same thing as everybody else, they're the one that's funding the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And they all fail. Like, if there's a truism in this world, it's that these cults, these socialistic cults, all fail, and thank God Mormonism did too, and it's not around to bother us anymore.
Thank God.
There it is, the United Order. Gone and done.
Amazing. Well, then let's all give ourselves some breathing room and move on. Gentlemen,
Hello.
we are we convene each week to make the show for the people, and the people in turn, they feel the Holy Spirit from us, and they decide, oh, I'm going to give them money. And I think that
hashtag blessed.
and I think that that's correct. I think everyone should do it, and I think it should probably be 10% of their income.
Why not?
It just seems fair.
Compounded
Seems like a nice
daily.
It's a nice round number, so go ahead and do that. We have some folks to thank, people who decided to give us money this week, and those people are Emily, Christine, Lamb Chop of Satan, and David. So thank you all so much for your generous contributions. Anyone else who wishes to contribute can do so by going to howtoheretic.com and clicking on the Support Us tab. It doesn't hurt. It tickles a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's nice. And then if you can't do that, we're not mad, but there's more that you could do.
Stars. To the stars. Ad Astra. To the stars. They're free for you. Mm-hmm. They're free for you to fill our sky with constellations of love in a giant stellar hug. So if you can go someplace, any place, give us 5 stars. Write a review. Write a nice review. Lie.
Yeah.
Bear false witness. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, look, we don't believe in religion anymore, so lying is not a sin. If you like us 4 stars amount, give us 5 stars. It's still the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And that will help us get the word out.
Round up. Always round up when giving
Always
Miracle
round
stars.
up. If you think we're a 2-star show, still round up to 5. That's just how this works.
If you think we're a 2-star show, what are you listening for?
Why are you doing this?
Yes.
But
hang up the phone. So yes, give us stars, give us money, and we're just going to keep giving you the love through the infected air every week.
Indeed. Moving on.
Uncle Doug, there's been things keeping me up at night recently.
Yeah? Do tell.
Yeah. Forest fires.
Is it everything?
It's a combination of everything, but there's an everything that's everythinger than all the rest of the everythings. And that everything is, I am really concerned about Catholic representation on the Supreme Court. I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to say
it.
Ever since Scalia died, it's down to like 80%. And I just don't think that's right.
It's not good.
I thought you were going to say what's keeping you up at night is the fact that the world we're living in seems to be Alex Jones reading the book of Revelation in your ear.
I actually bought the audiobook of him doing that.
I would love that so much.
He should do audiobooks.
He should. And that's the one to start with, right?
Revelation,
there.
And then he could do some Judy Blume.
Or he could always do Go Ask Alice.
Yeah. Oh my God!
We'd hire some sweet girl for the before voice, and then he can do the after voice.
But no, you're right. It has been a hell of a week or 2 or 3 or 4.
Whatever. What is
whatever?
Anything?
A crazed quote unquote debate. Then Trump and half the people who have met him finally succumbed to their own stupidity in the form of a virus that they all knew about and could easily have avoided if they hadn't decided to take the taking reasonable precautions to protect each other is slavery approach.
Yeah. Hold on. I exhaled, and I think my almost microscopic violin blew away. Let me see if I can
find it. Yeah. And my car got broken into, so...
Is that true?
It's just been a hell of a week, you guys.
Thanks, Obama.
Thanks, Obama. And then there's the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So Ruth Bader Ginsburg, whose influence moved the needle dramatically on issues of equality, especially for women, decided we needed one more lunatic issue to addle our already pummeled brains. Yeah. So she drove a dump truck of chaos to the top of Mount Politics and shuffled off this mortal coil.
Yes, she was more cancer than woman by the end, but she fought the good fight.
So as soon as that happened, the United States Senate, led by the same foreskins with eyes who blocked Obama's nominee, Merrick Garland, 4 years ago, saying it was too close to the election, even though Antonin Scalia's sauce pocket burst not late in September of an election year, but February.
Yeah.
Admitted that their own policy only applies to them when it helps. And determined that they would push through whatever nominee the Donald put in front of them.
Yeah.
That nominee turns out to be Amy Coney Barrett, appellate court judge, Notre Dame law professor, and mother of 19 children. I kid. Her quiver isn't that full. There are only 7 young'uns currently being neglected because of her insane work schedule. So, in the short time since her announcement, pundits on the right have screamed and shouted that Barrett is being discriminated against. Yeah. They're crying foul, yelling religious discrimination from the rooftops. They hiss and bark, and they say that the liberal left is treating her unfairly because she's a Catholic?
Yeah. And this hue and cry has begun, like, it almost came with her name.
Yeah.
Right.
They were ready for it. They were ready for it.
There are more Catholics sitting in the Supreme Court chamber any day than there are at a fish fry in Boston on Friday.
Totally. Look, 5.5 of the 8 remaining justices on the Supreme Court are Catholic.
Who's the half?
Well, there seems to be some confusion about whether Gorsuch considers himself Episcopalian or Catholic. Anyway, he was raised Catholic, so, we'll give him a half on that one.
All right.
But, so, anti-Catholic sentiment...
He's Catholic.
He's Catholic, that's right. Look, nobody raised any fuss about any of them and their Catholicism. Joe Biden, the Democratic candidate for president of the goddamn country, is Catholic.
Yes.
Catholicism is obviously not a problem for Dems. So what's really going on? Well, to answer that, we need to talk about her other religion. What, you ask? How could she have another religion? You can't have more than one religion, can you? Did she convert? Well, no. And also, maybe? We'll get to it. But before we do, follow me back in time to 19th century America, when a young upstart religious movement claimed to be restoring the original power of the Church of Jesus Christ to these latter days. They claimed that individuals could have personal revelations and could work powerful miracles with the restored priesthood powers of old. They believed in the gifts of healing and tongues and other spiritual gifts, and these gifts could be wielded by average, ordinary believers, not just the chosen few. Now, here's the thing. You could have been raised in one of several American religious traditions, and I might have just described your origin story. What I just described certainly applies to Mormonism that we all grew up in. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that is not at all a unique story. It applies to literally hundreds of different religious movements in the United States in the 19th and 20th centuries. In this case, I'm talking about the movement that led to Pentecostalism and then eventually to charismatic Christianity. Now, Pentecostalism is named after the holiday Pentecost, which is the Christian name for the Jewish holiday Shavuot, or the Feast of Weeks. But when Christians celebrate it, they're not commemorating the giving of the Torah to the people of Israel at Mount Sinai. No! The Christians took that already established holiday and changed it for their own purposes. Weird, right?
Yeah.
Who ever heard of the Christians doing that? Anyway, the Pentecost is the celebration of a thing from the second chapter of the book of Acts that happened to occur on the day of Shavuot. Acts we've already referred to on this show, but you can hear Doug's retelling of the whole gripping yarn in episode 149.
I'm sorry, everybody.
And 150, but this part happened in 149. Basically what happened was that God's Spirit descended on a group of Christ followers, and they all spoke in foreign tongues, and people from all over the world happened to be there and were amazed to hear these Galileans able to speak their native Phrygian language perfectly. Now, if there's one lesson that all the religious types should have learned over the 2 millennia since Jesus supposedly died, it should be that we don't take stuff like this literally. But Americans are new, and everything this country does is like a teenager who knows nothing but is convinced they've really got it all figured out, and off they rush to do it all way better than the rest of all the idiots. So, Pentecostals started, quote, speaking in tongues. There was, of course, the problem of that the Spirit of God had not, in fact, descended on them, and they therefore were not able to actually speak a different language that they had never before encountered. This problem was quickly surmounted by revival tents being filled with the painfully embarrassing sound of nonsense syllables being blathered at breakneck pace. It's literally like that. Incidentally, if you check out the most recent episode of Thank God I'm Atheist, which is episode 461, I believe, we actually talk about this phenomenon. And in the show notes, there's a link to an amazing clip where a whole stage full of preachers, instructed by a guy named Sid Roth, who is an actual Jew for Jesus, who he says to them, all pray in tongues. And they all, they erupt into this blah, blah, blah nonsense, which comes to a head when one woman, bedecked in a pink sequined blazer, rises and gives a solo tongues performance that starts out okay, but then degenerates into ha, 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 and then she hears it, and literally her ha's turn into laughter as she hears how stupid she herself sounds. It's amazing. Go check that out.
I'm still triggered from the presidential debate. I don't think I need to hear people screaming in nonsense language.
Oh my God. It's so weird. Pentecostalism arose out of the revivalist movement and really gained traction in the early 20th century. It's actually kind of cute. Early on, they actually thought that their jibber-jabber might be real, and at least one important guy, Charles Fox Parham, thought that he could send missionaries abroad and they wouldn't need to learn the language because they were already speaking it.
How'd that work out? God, that's fantastic.
Oh, cute little Charles Fox Parham.
Some guy knocks on your door.
It's like that moment on 30 Rock when John Hamm's character thinks he speaks French because he's so handsome nobody's told him it's not real.
I don't remember that. That's great.
Anyway, despite what should have been obvious to everyone who saw it, this shit took the fuck off. Protestants all over the place were freeing their tongues for Jesus. Faith healings had become a big crowd pleaser too. And since there was no internet to fact check what the fuck was actually going on, the credulous populace here and abroad lapped this "we can do Jesus magic too" shit up. By the 1960s, people in the bigger Protestant denominations started to get jealous of all the crazy shit these Pentecostals were doing. They didn't want to sit through boring old church with incense and organ music while just down the road there was a tent positively throbbing with rambunctious hootin' and hollerin'. So they decided to get them some. This became the charismatic movement. Now, if you've met more than 3 charismatic Christians, you know that we're not talking about the kind of charismatic that means that people have compelling personalities. In this case, we are going back to the original Greek meaning of charisma, which is something like gift, referring to the divine gifts of God. These gifts are things like the aforementioned tongues, prophecy, and healing, though they tend to have less emphasis on tongues than the Pentecostals. Charismatic Christianity is interesting because it's not its own religion. It's often more like a sidecar to your regular religion. It was adding augmented reality goggles to your already crafted religious worldview. Now, major names in other sects were signing on to the notion of Jesus magic. Guys like Oral Roberts and William Branham got into the game. And all of this kind of made sense for Protestants. They had spent a few centuries after divorcing themselves from the all-encompassing power of Rome, crafting and recrafting their beliefs as they saw fit, which was totally in line with the sort of every man is a priest notion that Martin Luther had championed. What made absolutely zero sense was a little later in the 60s when a charismatic Catholic movement started. I guess
in the 1960s?
In the 1960s.
Yeah.
The allure of personal importance was way too tempting for 20th century sensibilities to let the Protestants have all the fun. In 1967, a small group of apparently disgruntled Catholics met at the Catholic Duquesne. I have to remind myself how to pronounce that because it's spelled Duquesne. Duquesne University. They met there for a 3-day retreat. There they talked about the Book of Acts and a book called The Cross and the Switchblade. Sounds brilliant.
Heard of it yet?
Yep.
I'm sure they probably talked about some other things that we won't bring up in this podcast.
Yeah, and presumably they wanted how they wanted to be cool like all the Pentecostals and Charismatics were.
And the took us on that altar boy.
Right, yeah, exactly. So they tried out some of the goofball stuff, and lo and behold, they felt the Spirit. Praise Jesus! So that crazy energy spread around Duquesne like a California wildfire. Soon, two young theology professors, William Story and Ralph Kiefer, took this newfound zeal back to their alma mater, Notre Dame. Well, like more recent events, Notre Dame turned out to be a super spreader, and the baffling notion of charismatic Catholicism took off.
Really? At Notre Dame, of all places?
Indeed. Huh. Don't go there if you don't want to catch either a dread disease or apparently a crazy cultish new religion.
Or tongues.
Right.
Well, I'm going to cancel my trip to Notre Dame then.
Yeah. It's the infected Irish.
That was my honeymoon.
Yeah. It was there in South Bend, Indiana, that the People of Praise began. In 1971, about 30 people started meeting after Mass and augmenting their stodgy old religious experience with fun new ways to pretend Jesus is real. They were led by two grad students, Kevin Ranagan. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. There's a G and an H in there, so I'm not sure which I'm supposed to pronounce.
You know what happened? You know what happened to him when he lost his election? He ran again. But
there's the old Doug. He's back.
There he is.
Back, baby.
Him and Paul DeCellis, who had participated in some retreats connected to the Spanish Cursillo movement, which I have no time to get into, but were basically what would happen if Tony Robbins were from Spain and focused on religion instead of business. And it seems to have been effective because it wasn't long until there were tens of thousands of people in the charismatic Catholic movement. You'd think that the larger Catholic community would totally reject this new lunacy out of hand. But no. This was Vatican II Catholicism. This was more open, more welcoming Catholicism. These were hip, non-judgmental, groovy Catholics. They weren't going to harsh everybody's buzz. Pope Paul VI gave his blessing, and they were off to the races. So that's Amy Coney Barrett's deal. She and her family are indeed Catholics, but they are also members of People of Praise, which is what some folks are actually concerned about. So let's talk about POP. What do they actually believe? Why is anyone concerned? Just because Margaret Atwood wrote The Handmaid's Tale after she heard about charismatic Catholics? That worries you somehow?
Is that true?
That is fucking true. It may not be People of Praise, but it's one of the offshoots of this movement.
I swear 2020 is just so fucking crazy. Like
I didn't need to know that.
Yeah, wow.
That is fucking legit, and they actually, whatever the group was that she got this from, used to call women handmaidens or handmaids, and they actually stopped doing that after Atwood's book got popular. So there you go.
I'm just going to call again make my daily call to the Canadian consulate to see if they have any openings.
Right?
Yeah.
It's it's almost winter there though, so maybe we can hold out. We'll see.
Another day, another blowjob. That's what I say.
That's what I've always said too.
Yeah.
The People of Praise it's a covenant community. That means that each member makes a covenant or vow or promise, which is kept fairly secret, but means that they are not just talking about a Bible study group. You swear into this thing. It's kind of like the Masons, only they allow women because somebody's got to be subservient. Am I right? The covenant is pretty boring for most of it, actually, but it includes the following, which may seem innocuous but has a very culty edge to it. Quote, "We accept the order of this community which the Lord is establishing with all the ministry gifts of the Holy Spirit, especially with the foundational ministry gifts of apostles, pastors, prophets, teachers, and evangelists. We agree to obey the direction of the Holy Spirit manifested in and through these ministries in full harmony with the Church. We recognize in the covenant our unique relationship to one another and between the individual and the community. We accept the responsibility for mutual care, concern, and ministry among ourselves. Now that sounds okay, but it goes on. But the main thrust is we are locking into this thing with each other, and that shit's for real. And the notion of obedience in that in that covenant began to morph. It went from obedience to the Holy Spirit to maybe you should be obedient to the leaders. And suddenly the hierarchy formed. To that end, each member is assigned a head who is a personal spiritual advisor.
Like a human head?
Like a person, but yes.
Oh, I thought she was a cephalophore and she was going to carry a head
yes,
around.
Exactly. That
would not surprise me one bit.
That comes later.
Yeah.
This person is deemed to be more spiritualer than thou, and can therefore guide you in your decision making. It's kind of like an AA sponsor, I guess.
Right, it's your sponsor.
Right. But it gets a little intense. Members at the top of the chain were asked to, quote, fully submit their lives to the leaders, called coordinators of the group, and they would then be the head for those below. It's like spiritual multi-level marketing. Eventually you have a whole downstream. It's great. All the people of praise meet weekly in a group. Then there are weekly men's meetings and women's meetings, and weekly meetings with your head. And I guess if you're somebody else's head, you meet with them. The whole environment is insanely high control.
Right.
It's like they were part of a huge, easy religion and thought, God, I wish this were a cult. Don't you guys all wish this were a cult? And the examples of cultiness are kind of astounding. I give you, for example, courtship. When a young man thinks he might be ready to date, he goes to his head, and they discuss whether he is in a financial and psychological and spiritual position to marry. Then, if they agree that that's a good idea, the man goes out and courts some ladies until he finds one who responds well to his particular mating dance and plumage. Nope, that's peacocks. Sorry. When he finds a woman he's interested in, he consults with his head again about her, and they decide if she's appropriate marriage material.
And then he buys her from her father.
Right, right. No, he pops the question, and then she has to go to her head, and they discuss. And then, if all the heads agree, they announce it at the next meeting, and then they're engaged.
So the head could say, no, you can't marry that person.
100%.
What a lovely courtship.
Yeah.
It's actually impossible to overstate how important and controlling this idea of headship, their words, not mine, is with these people. It's everything to them, and it's psychologically incredibly powerful. Even though the group will scream up and down that the head is just an advisor and everyone is free to make their own decisions, when people don't jive with what their assigned head is telling them, the whole community comes down on them. Headship is the whole ballgame for them. So if it fails, the system fails. And that can't be allowed to be the case. So, it can't be left to be just, this is an advisor. It's so much more than that. Now, people have left this group. As a matter of fact, in the beginning, fairly early on, just a couple years into this, one of the main guys left, and with him, and then that led to a whole group of others leaving. And this forced the sort of the head dude to give a whole talk, and he basically said that they had what's called a quitting spirit, which, yes, right? That's what it was.
I'm feeling that every fucking day now, let me tell you.
Right? But among them, this was a sign of pure evil. The commitment that these people make are, as one former member described it, an objectively binding obligation in conscience that one cannot be abandoned without the agreement of the other parties involved.
That's not how leaving works.
Right, exactly.
Oh, I guess I'm not leaving. I'll stay.
I'd like to break up with you, but I need a committee vote.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So as much as they want us all to believe that this is just advisorship, or this is just it's kind of a support group for Catholics or whatever, that is not what this is. And I've seen it in articles all over the web. They talk about how not a big deal this whole thing is. How could it be bad for somebody to have a spiritual mentor? But no, that is not what we're talking about here. What we are talking about is a group that is extremely controlling, and an individual, someone that should, by rights, by your own sort of commitment to the group and a promise that you made, a covenant that you've made, this person has some control over you.
Yeah.
Which that is pretty fucking concerning for a Supreme Court judge,
to say the least.
Even just conservative Catholicism, right, is very problematic for reproductive rights.
I was just going to say that. Yeah.
Basic human rights, for LGBTQ rights, women's rights, etc. Okay, that's just bad enough. And I would, even if she wasn't part of this, I would still feel completely. Religion is a choice.
Right.
The sect of your religion is a choice. Choices can be questioned. She should be questioned about.
And she is all in on all of those issues. She has shown to herself to be all in on all of those issues.
Yeah.
But then you add to that this layer of a very and also this cult is extremely gender roles and obsessed, extremely obsessed with controlling each other, and you've got yourself a problematic little belief system for someone who's meant to judge people.
To Uncle Mark's point, I don't get to choose Supreme Court justices, so my opinion may not be relevant, but I would consider being a devout Catholic disqualifying. You know what I mean? Like, and that this sounds orders of magnitude creepier, weirder, and more problematic than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
if you were an Opus Dei Catholic, I think that's a huge problem.
Right.
Mitt Romney was rightly questioned about, people brought this question up when he was running for president. It's like, well, you swear obedience to the Mormon Church prophet and leadership.
Yeah. You believe that God has a mouthpiece on earth.
Yeah.
What if he comes to you and says you have to do X?
Yeah. Launch the nukes. That was a legitimate question. It's like, when does the Supreme Court justices are supposed to understand and interpret the laws that are passed, right? And how they relate to the Constitution. And her mentor, I guess, or the person she most looks up to, I think she clerked for him, Antonin Scalia,
right?
Invented a whole new, fake system of how one does that, which is originalism, which means the founding fathers thought whatever I'm thinking right now.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
so
it makes you wonder, though. These are not irrelevant questions, right? Like, who have you sworn fealty to, and what have you sworn fealty to?
Yeah.
You're one of 9 people who can decide the fate of the entire country. You're not elected, and you will die in office.
I seem to remember that all news networks spent weeks questioning Obama's proximity to Jeremiah Wright.
Right.
Right. To his, I don't know what kind of religion it was, but his Protestant, pastor, whoever the guy was.
Yeah.
So I guess it was okay then.
Your pearl clutching is meaningless now.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what's the difference between Barack Obama and Antonin Scalia and Barrett.
And Donald Trump. I don't know.
I can't put my finger on it.
We'll sort it out. We'll figure it out at some point, surely.
All right. Well,
and up until a couple days ago, I was writing this as though she was definitely 100% going to be our next Supreme Court justice.
She looked unstoppable.
Who knows? It may be that there's a virus that has some say in the matter now, but
it may be.
It's still likely that she's going to be the next Supreme Court justice.
What the press is calling the Rose Garden event, where she was introduced and apparently was a super spreader event. They're now calling it the Rose Garden Massacre.
Right.
And, potentially 3 Republican members of the Judiciary Committee are going to have to be in quarantine. So,
Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell have already said they'll do it virtually.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, which is the first time they've wanted to do anything. You know, I mean, like, the hypocrisy is so goddamn thick.
The president who nominated her may be on life support when the vote happens. Three of the senators that are supposed to vote for her may be on life support.
And the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Lindsey Graham, is very likely to lose his election. You know, I mean, but not to go off on this tangent, but they've got the taste for Roe v. Wade in their mouth right now.
Yeah, and a whole slew of things. The ACA's gone right after the election. No question about it.
I mean, this
anyway, that's it. Look, our lives are only going to get better from here. So, woo-hoo!
Thanks, Uncle Dan. That was
Millhouse.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Well,
let's move on.
Well, friends, that's it for this week's Uneven Show.
Yeah, indeed. Hey, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email, howto@howtoheretic.com if you have, if you have a sidebar cult that goes along with your religion.
Yeah, or if you know if you know that a cow doesn't have a penis and whatever you thought was the urine is something else, you can leave us a voicemail about that at 903-8802, which is 903-884-6986, and you can also tell me about it on Twitter through the tiers.
And by the way, that's not urine. And always thanks to our patrons.
Yes, and thank you, Cody Layden, for levitating the show.
And thanks to all of you, dear friends, for tuning on in.
Bye, friends.